Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Welcome to another episode of Let's Build HubSpot Onboarding with Willem Reus. How you doing, man?
Very good. It is quite a nice temperature here, and you told me that it's a little bit cold in your on your side,
It
slightly.
is colder than I'd like it to be in Houston, Texas, that's for sure. But it will turn out to be a wonderful day at about 62 degrees in the afternoon, which
Oh, that's nice.
that's the reason I'm down here in January enjoying that kind of weather. But yeah, man, at the same time, fired up to talk about like if anybody wants to talk Commerce Hub right now, I'm just like let's go. I'm ready to talk about it at any moment, including the new way that I anticipate talking about it in 2025, which includes the whole quote CPQ mechanism with the acquisition of cash flow and starting to build that in. Really excited for that. Um, but I'm curious. You brought this up today in terms of you're on the pre-sales side now. You maybe becoming a little more familiar with the quoting tools in various ways. But what's on your mind today? Why did you want to talk about quotes?
So, to give a little bit of an overview, I used to always use every HubSpotter has two portals, a friends and family portal and a demo portal, and the demo portal is somewhat more HubSpot managed. And that is why up till now I used the other portal. So basically, I'm switching portals and I'm starting from scratch. That doesn't mean that it's the first portal that I ever see and I don't know what I'm talking about, but it does mean that I literally start with just about nothing. And that means that if I want to build out a complete demo, for instance, I believe that I need a quote. And if you think about onboarding and in general, and with quotes to be a bit more specific, one of the things that I really wonder is like, okay, let's say you are trying to sell me HubSpot and we are before the sale, and I ask you, and this is not personal, but more generic, I ask an average partner, how much is the onboarding and what is actually included? On the other hand, if you're a super admin, you've worked with HubSpot, let's say for now, for 10 years already, and you are new in a company that just purchased HubSpot, and I ask you as a super admin, what is onboarding? What is included? Then you will likely say, ooh, the quote should be included. That is something that everybody should just have, and otherwise you can't really use HubSpot. And that is where I struggle slightly. Like, how much time and effort should you put into this? And
Time and
if we,
effort in
yeah,
terms of including the implementation of HubSpot quotes into onboarding.
for me, creating a quote in HubSpot is really, really easy. It
Right.
may not
Yeah.
look like you want
Implementation.
it, but just to say, you know what, by default, it smacks the logo on there and you're good to go. And arguably, that is right. But if you think back about the episode that you had with Kevin, where he mentioned, the close rate dramatically increases if you really tell a story instead of just writing down a number. And I'm gonna say there's a time and place for both. Sometimes you just need to get a number and be done with it, and no fluffy bunny daycare or anything like that. It's just here's your quote, simple as that. But for most companies, that's not the case. You need storytelling.
Well, yes, I'll say definitely in agreement there. But I think the challenge that you're getting to, and this is where it's a transition. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a broken record, but like even the different point solutions that you could sell now versus like are different from the point solutions of old. Um, like even before the fact that we shouldn't be focused so much on point solutions and it's a platform. And I think once you realize it's a platform, you start to realize there's more to just creating quotes than meets the eye. But for me, it's the difference of like when all the point solutions are in marketing land, right? And it's just let's send some emails, let's do some social. So often it's stuff that's like not happening at all, right? So you can just turn it on, right? And you're not going to impact a lot of daily activity. By doing that, you can have some marketing person or some other admin over here just doing it, like playing with it. But every company has some kind of proposal, quoting, whatever process to get customers to pay them. They all have something already, even if it's as simple as sharing a price via email, right? Um, and that's where yeah, it's easy to create a quote in HubSpot, but that's like 5% of the problem max. The other 95% is the sales process that leads to creating the quote. And like what I talked about with Kevin, in that moment, this storytelling, like if if the team like doesn't feel the need, like they're used to doing it very transactionally and they see the quote as just like another like check the box, let's get this done, right? Getting them to put in the effort to create a good looking proposal and treat it as a marketing doc. Like we're not done yet. By the way, this might be the most important part of your sales process. So please don't lose all the trust that you had in this moment, right? Don't assume just because they said they want to close, they're going to click the buttons and sign everything. Like if they can't read it or they can't share it or, all these things. So I think that's where um, and that's why I like to think about this as like quote to cash optimization. Like this is a part of the journey that you got to get right. And getting it right or wrong has a very huge can have a very huge impact like on many aspects of the business, right?
But the question is, do you think about this from the seller's perspective or from the buyer's perspective? Because from the seller's perspective, having the simplest quote ever makes the most sense. But if you're thinking about the real buyer's journey, what do they want to get? The quote should build trust. And realistically, as a seller, do you really care? Well, you care about the close rate, of course, but do you really see the relationship between the quote, how that looks, and the close rate? I'm going to say that a lot of people don't.
Right. Oh, I 100% agree. And thanks to my ADHD, I'm constantly thinking about both sellers and buyers and probably the business, like way too many things at the same time. But luckily, that helps me like kind of connect these dots where there are moments where you want it to be as transactional as possible because
Absolutely.
we're ready and you can this like selling past the close. Like, no, it's not time for the 10-page proposal. Just give me the thing. Like we just like that's where it's like
I
when you
just need
can
a
do
box.
that on a call, right? You could
Yeah,
just create it on a call and here's the link. We're paid, done. Like that's the kind of thing like every company that I've ever met could take advantage of that. in a lot of regards. That's why I was so excited, whether it's payment links or just creating a quote or creating this ease of close, um, is really possible. But you can't lean into that. Like you can't do that, farther up in the process, right? Like companies that don't really understand and they say like buy now, and then you click the button and it's like there's no way in hell like you could buy right now because we haven't talked about your needs and there's this whole process. And right, if we let you buy now it would go really badly, right? um so that's so much comes to mind, and that's why I spend time on this, because also from a HubSpot practitioner perspective, this is one of the best places, if not the best place, to get sales adoption of HubSpot,
Yeah,
right? From two
absolutely.
perspectives, you make the sales team's life immensely easier. Two, it's a forcing mechanism, right? Like if we're switching to HubSpot to do quotes, this is the only way you close deals now. Like, so there's no like you can't do it via email anymore because you won't get commission and all these things, right? So it's plays both sides. That's why it's amazing to run into teams that have Sales Hub and are not using HubSpot quotes, right?
But do
And
you
not
mean
because they
team?
have some complex CPQ system, but just they're just not using it because they haven't added that part of the process in, right?
But do you mean
They're using
teams
it
that are
strictly from a
using PandaDocs,
CRM.
for instance?
No, I mean teams that just they have their own process of either building Excel sheets or PowerPoints or whatever, right? Um, because it can get there can be configuration needs, right? Um, but there's almost always something that could just be like, all right, here's this line item, here's this price. Like, but since we view it, for me, since this is where it's like the phrase sales CRM does
Yeah.
not default is not default defined to include quoting in most people's understandings, right? That I've
Yeah, yeah,
seen, right?
I
There's
get
always
that. Yeah.
some other system like a CPQ or like some proposal. I've even been surprised at how many, proposal and quoting, platforms are out there since I've gotten into this side. But yeah, that's where they just don't put HubSpot in that category. So it's like they don't even think to try and start doing quoting, right?
But to kind of be the devil's advocate there, let's just say for now that I started using a starter version of HubSpot. Quoting is not really included in there. So I use PandaDoc. You can integrate PandaDoc with a starter version. So I have my template set up and all that sort of thing. And now I get Sales Hub Pro. And you ask me to create a quote template. Oh, crap. Now what? I will likely keep using PandaDoc because it just requires some coding and that sort of thing. And it's I'm
And
not
just to
necessarily gonna say by design, but it is harder to make a quote compared to, ooh, you just mess around a little bit in PandaDoc and you have a decent looking quote. Well, in HubSpot, you really have to think about the quote, think about the impact, think about which properties to include, and messing around
you
is
have
not
to
an option.
understand your process, you mean,
Yeah,
Willem?
absolutely. But it
Yeah.
also means that as a sales rep, I can't just say, you know what, I'm gonna change some things and that sort of thing. That really is not an option.
Yeah. Just to clarify, for anybody watching, the ability to do custom quote templates is what gets unlocked um, at Pro. you can use quotes and line items and products to some extent at free and starter levels. Um, but once you, that's where the, again, this is where we run into the use cases and the point solutions. Since everybody's used to, it's been amazing to me at how really dysfunctional, I think is the right word, the quote to cash, like part of the process has been. And when you look at how the direction SaaS has gone, right? And I kind of get it because it's financials, right? This is not customer data that we're having to regulate anymore. This is financials. There's lots of regulation. It's different all over the world,
Yep.
like in all the different countries. So there's like infinite space to play in and niche down and create something very specific for CPQ, for proposal management, for tax, tax rate management, uh, all these different ERP modules, like Salesforce. Like when I talked to Bill about it, Bill Barless, we do the Let's Build CPQ show. It's not, we feel confident in saying that CPQ might be the most complex and misunderstood part of the tech stack. Like, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't help. So where we started is the CPQ, for instance, like configure price quote, understanding what's happening. Like, so HubSpot out of the box, it does quote, it does the quote part,
Yeah.
right? Pricing, things like price books, bundling, things like that, not out of the box. Shout out to the team at Happily. They did an awesome webinar yesterday. Their quote Happily tool is bundling and it's all in the HubSpot interface. Really cool. Um, but then even with configure, right? Two types of configuration. One is configuring the deal, right? Like licensing and packaging and pricing, like based on what
Terms and
levels you're
conditions.
at, right? And that's where in SaaS, in the world of SaaS, like that's what the focus has been on. So things like Deal Hub and it's like nice proposal rooms and how do we make this proposal experience great and configure the proposal, including the story and the assets that are needed, right? But then since I'm from manufacturing side, the big C configure, which is product configuration,
Yep.
requires a rules engine and a lot of stuff that we really shouldn't try to do in HubSpot, in my opinion. Um, and to your point about thinking about it from the buyer's perspective or the seller's perspective, it very quickly goes from, well, I could just send this price in this email body, right? So why are you making it hard for me by making me go through this system? It quickly moves from there to like, I need to use this crazy complex spreadsheet or configurator to understand if we can even build, the product you want, if it's
Yeah.
available, if the supply chain, if we have inventory of all the parts, right? And that's where the in between, it's either, I'm finding this a lot with Commerce Hub, where HubSpot is in this in between where people either want it to be so easy to fit with the way that they're already doing with, like, why do I even need a system in the first place? Or HubSpot is not nearly complex enough to support my actual need. And that goes all the way from product configuration to all the MRR and ARR and uh, you know the SaaS commerce, like high level stuff that we're looking forward to cash flow bringing. It's done that super well. I don't know if you've seen any of the demos, but like when it can forecast MRR and ARR, like as you're creating the proposal, man, that's powerful stuff. Sorry, I get a
Yeah.
little passionate about this, man. So you gotta break in,
Let's
break
face
in
it,
here
the
when you
whole
can.
MRR bit is somewhat of a sore spot until now in HubSpot. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, it comes
and
up every day, and I look forward to so I've been invested in this use case, since 2017, like when Sales Hub first came out, right? Was trying to do all the things in Salesforce, right? After having done it in QuickBooks. I think this is where there's so much baggage related to how it's been done, like because businesses require this part of the process to to happen, right? So a
yeah,
ton of companies start with QuickBooks because they've got to manage the finances, right?
in the US, keep that in mind.
Yes, in US. Um, there's some financial mechanism, that's like revenue and cash is the heartbeat, the lifeblood of the business, whatever you want to say, right? So there's some, if we've got to manage anything, it usually it's that first, right? And so systems like QuickBooks, okay, here's some quotes. You can do quotes from QuickBooks. Like, and that's where I started. That's where my journey started back in 2013. And I rejoiced in 2015 when I was like, I could start using Salesforce as a proper CRM because I couldn't do anything that I wanted to do in QuickBooks in terms of keeping track of human beings, like their
Because
email
because
addresses.
that's not what it's made to do.
Exactly. Right. So now we're in a point where we're like 12 years later from when I was experiencing this the first time, people still can't figure out this integration with QuickBooks as an example because like it holds the keys to the financial truth, right? And but it doesn't match with HubSpot's data model.
Yeah,
So, but it can, right? And I've had some good conversations about that. But unless you get, I think the challenge and quoting, you usually benefit from all of the context that has happened around. Are they a customer? How many times have they bought this thing? Do I need to educate them on this thing right now? Or have they bought it a bunch? Is this somebody new? And as we integrate these systems together, like I'll say one benefit, like when you target quoting as a use case implementation of HubSpot first, it solves so much more than most other use cases because a lot of shit has to work right, like for you to be
absolutely.
able to systematize quoting. But a challenge, like when we're talking about integrating systems, like post sales data and financial data, like it serves the entire customer journey.
Yeah,
So if somebody just says, I want to integrate QuickBooks, it's like, do you want to support better customer marketing and marketing automation? Do you want to do quotes better? Do you want to reduce your collections list by invoicing and communicating about invoices properly? Do you want to have subscription? Like the whole journey. So it's it's a I'm gonna love watching this year progress because
yep.
that's also why the team hasn't been able to just okay, we're gonna fix quoting and line items because everybody's frustrated and it's an entire infrastructure that needs to change. Um, right?
Yeah, but you're thinking about QuickBooks. Keep in mind that in Europe and the US is not the biggest market for HubSpot. In Europe, QuickBooks is basically nowhere to be found. So that
So
really
what
means
what
that
will I find in place of
uh,
QuickBooks?
Xero, for instance, but there are a number
Mhm.
of different solutions, and it really is. Europe has different solutions than, for instance, well, one is overlapping with Africa. In Asia, they have, again, different solutions, and everybody will, of course, say, ooh, my solution is the best. But that really means that since the different solutions have different data models, it isn't just like, ooh, we can change HubSpot a little bit so there will be a plug and play integration. No, it is a freaking nightmare to really build something that will integrate with everything.
Yeah.
And that is where, especially with Commerce Hub, with how the payments were set up, we've come a long way. But there's always room for additional growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think it fits in. We kind of been all over the place, but I think this is indicative of the issue that we're dealing with, right? Like when you think about these other systems and how it's been done, like quick systems like QuickBooks and Salesforce, the the market leaders in these various spaces, um, like they have decided what the data model should be, what the process should look like, no matter how irrational the process feels. Like when you look at how a system like QuickBooks is set up or how ERPs are set up, like when none of them are built around this, and I talked about this yesterday in my morning show, like the value of HubSpot at its core is it's built around a contact record, right?
Yeah,
So,
around a number of things, but it's built as one system, and that is the primary
right.
difference.
Yeah. Well, the data model, I would say like that's what's always drawn me to HubSpot and the confidence in saying this is a different platform than a Salesforce, than an ERP, because those systems are inherently Salesforce is built around accounts and opportunities, like clear as day, right?
Yeah,
And no matter how far they've come, that's how it was designed from the ground up, right? So naturally, the system sways that way. ERPs, they're looking at things like orders and customers, which the customer always is, every time I've seen it at least, represents a company and not a person. And these internals, because you need that system to manage margins and accounting and these kinds of things. So that's where it's the way they have tried to build in contact management and human communications. Like you have to, I mean, it's a fun challenge for me, not for everybody, but you can start to dig into, yeah, this is how you've been doing it because this is the way that QuickBook you had to do it in
yeah,
QuickBooks. But if if you've got to send this, if the customer says, I need this invoice sent to 50 people or this quote sent to this many people, like the way you had to do it in QuickBooks made no damn sense, but you couldn't do it any other way. So instead of trying to bring that way into HubSpot, let's just have all these contacts associated with the deal properly.
yeah,
And now we can communicate. And then we send information to QuickBooks when it's ready. Uh, and accounting teams are some of the quickest to get on board with HubSpot. And I love it because it makes so much sense. I mean, when you handle communications, you have less collections, people pay you faster, all these things. That's at the heart. I love that message from Jack, like Jack Cooper Smith when he's talking about Commerce Hub. Like one of the value props is get paid faster.
yeah. Because you're talking about people, you have a relationship with them, and yeah, something about the R in CRM. And I know we're talking about the customer platform, but you get what I mean.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, relationships. And I think that's the part where like no matter how great the relationship has been, the quoting piece, like when it's time to pay, like that is the riskiest, like the riskiest moments. Like, not riskiest, there's high risk involved, especially when you get to T's and C's, and just people take that uh, exchange, that part of the conversation for granted. Um, I remember the first time I started working with George, um, and the first quote that he sent me, his T's and C's were like 2 lines. Like, it was basically like, "Let's be good humans," right? As you might imagine. Didn't say that exactly, but that was the
Yeah,
intent, right? And that's
yeah,
where it's when you think about it in the process, you've built all this trust with somebody like George, right? Like, do you need like 40-page T's and C's to read through, right? Now, I'm not saying everybody can get away with that,
nope.
but when you understand that that is a very important part of the process, you don't just throw it out there expecting that they're going to read through 40 pages and that they're going to know like exactly where to comb through, or that their finance team or their legal team or whoever's got to look at it next is able to open the link easily to look at the thing, right? all these all these things come into play, um, which is why deal rooms are very powerful. These more collaborative spaces to say, like, oh yeah, like show hide mechanisms, T's and C's are under here, but then a nice video that goes with it says, hey, here's the
To make it
proposal,
personal again.
right? If you're on the, if you're the champion, here's what I want you to pay attention to. If you're in legal, here's what you need to pay attention to, right? There's so much opportunity to tell that story, right? Um, and it starts, for me, it starts with the unified view of the customer. It makes that easier if you know who's involved, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but we're talking about the unified view of the customer. The quotes are basically around the deals and everything in the deals to kind of bring the conversation back to the quotes and the configuration of that. And that just requires somebody to really think about the entire scope of what's in the platform. You build a quote, ooh, there's a person associated to that. There's a deal associated to that. What about line items? Yeah, that's also in the deal. How do I take that into account? And once you start thinking about that, then is it an easy drop and drag thing where you can just like in some competitors really create a quote real quick, which kind of works but doesn't keep everything into account. And that is why for me, yeah, it's a pain to create a quote. But from a business perspective, you should basically only do it once and then do it right.
yeah. Um, like, so what are you looking forward to this year as you see, Commerce Hub grow, and what challenges are you looking forward to that handling?
First of all, I have no inside knowledge there, but I am really looking forward to what we will do at Inbound because I think that from the commerce perspective, that will be big. And that is not based on anything that I heard internally, but just look at the track record. We purchase a company, we do our magics, that will take a while, then it comes inbound, and guess what? Well, apply the same logics. Inbound this year will be awesome.
Yeah. And I will note, like, they have made some public, presentations. There was a hug in December where Jack Cooper Smith and Adam Wainwright went over the roadmap, at least from a strategic perspective, it's remains to be seen on when all this stuff happens, obviously. But they're thinking of it as I hope they would, like the quote to
Yeah.
cash, like basically everything but accounting is the goal with Commerce Hub. And for me, it's magical in terms of like to get a true unified view of the customer, you have to have a unified view of revenue related to that customer, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
we have the space. You can create that now in HubSpot in terms of creating space for the data. It gets a little clunky when it comes to reporting and dashboards and all the nice things, right? But as orders come into play, as we get clear around deals and quotes and this upgrade, I'm just really excited to make that easier than ever. And it's hard to think that this is so revelatory, but that's where I come back to like the way it's been done. Like there are so many apps and software products in the quote to cash like space that no, it's very hard to find a platform that has done all of this well because it's been such an integral piece. And when you find the one you want, and it works for you, it's not easy
Yeah.
to change
No,
that part of the
absolutely not.
process, right?
But you also so think about the pain of not having it and onboarding and that sort of thing. So if you have something, you will likely stick to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's going to be exciting. I'm happy to talk about this topic as much as you want. I know there's lots of aspects to it,
Absolutely.
and it's going to be exciting to see it transpire this year. So um, if you guys are out there wondering, um, either you want to be introduced to quotes, got some episodes on that, but also just you know,
Let us know.
uh, what's that?
Just let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know, and I'll just say, like, be open to playing. It's not like other systems. I think that's where it's once you start talking about money, people, like, it's just there's less leeway to just click buttons, right? So, maybe I don't wanna create this quote button because then in other systems, it's there for life and I can't delete it and things like that. But yeah, just have an open mind when it comes to this part of your sales process. There's a lot of gains to be had. Um, think about your process, find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great Thursday, everybody.
I'm gonna guess that Jack